Tonight on Legislative Review. Leasing out state-owned vacant lands. Plus, allowing out-of-state licensed cosmetologists to practice in Washington. And a bill aimed to boost funding for school materials and operating costs. You're watching Legislative Review. Thank you for watching Legislative Review. I'm Angela Nolasco with today's top discussions in the state legislature.
Substitute House Bill 1774, the Secretary will read.
State senators gathered on the floor Tuesday evening to debate a bill concerning how the state manages unused highway land and whether it should be leased for less than market value to support community programs. House Bill 1774 would allow vacant land owned by the Washington State Department of Transportation, or WSDOT, to be leased out, both for profit and for public benefit or purposes. Right now, the law says that the state has to lease these properties at fair market value, basically whatever the land is worth in dollars. But if the bill passes, it would let the state factor in social, environmental, and economic benefits too. Things like building housing, creating parks, restoring salmon habitat, or improving public transit. The bill has broad support from city leaders and nonprofits. They say it would help cities revitalize forgotten corners, build affordable housing, and even clean up places like Puneti Park in Tacoma. But not everyone's on board. Vocal critics argue that it would be unfair to taxpayers and that these lands should be sold instead of being leased. And while the bill wouldn't allow leases in areas where safety or traffic might be at risk, opponents say the long-term costs still aren't clear. Democratic Senator and Transportation Committee Chair Marco Lias spoke in favor of the bill.
We've heard about land that's adjacent to school facilities that could be used to support school bus operations and other kinds of valuable purposes. There's land in the Metro Seattle region that could be put to better use to house temporary short-term housing options for folks that aren't able to get housing in other places. So this is a way of utilizing our state lands for the public's benefit and making sure that DOT is able to better steward the resources that they're in charge of.
Republican Senator and Transportation Committee Ranking Member Curtis King shared his concerns.
You have to realize that the lands that we're talking about are surplus lands to DOT, and they should be trying to sell these lands. And they say, well, there's some that they can't sell that nobody's interested in. There's little parcels here, little pieces there. I get all that. But when somebody says, well, I have a $2 million grant and I want this piece of property that's worth $600,000, but I don't want to pay for it. I just want the state to lease it to me at little or no money for rent for 50 years. That's when I have a problem, because these pieces of property were bought with 18th Amendment money, gas tax money, paid for all of these. And it's the responsibility of DOT when they have surplus property to try and sell it.
The Senate took a floor vote.
Mr. President, there are 29 ayes, 19 nays, 1 excused.
Having received a constitutional majority, Substitute House Bill 1774 is amended by the Senate is declared passed. The title of the bill will be the title of the act.
In March, the bill was passed by the House on a 70-27 vote. If enacted, WSDOT would have to annually report who's leasing the land and for what purpose. Imagine you're a licensed cosmetologist, but every time you move states, you have to start over. For anyone relocating, like military spouses for example, this can mean weeks or months without work. A bill debated on the Senate floor Wednesday morning could change that. House Bill 1023, which unanimously passed the House last month, would enable Washington State to join the Cosmetology Licensure Compact, a multi-state agreement that makes licenses portable. Its goal? To help cosmetologists licensed in one member state work in others, cutting the red tape, and letting licensed professionals work in any member state without reapplying. Supporters say it would give them more freedom and less delay, and boost small businesses while helping working families. Democratic Senator Rebecca Saldana expressed her support for the bill.
We have, in this state, approved many compacts to make sure that military spouses are able to come to our state of Washington and be able to continue to have meaningful professions and be able to be active in our local economies while their loved ones are serving our nation.
Also speaking in favor of the bill, Republican Senator Curtis King.
The concern was, well, those that just want to work in the state of Washington have no plans to work anywhere else. They didn't want to have to pay a higher price for a multi-state license. And so the amendment that we just passed kind of clarifies that for the Department of Licensing and tells them how they should handle it. I think this is a very good bill, and I would ask the body for their support.
The Senate voted on the bill.
Mr. President, there are 49 ayes, 0 nay.
Having received a constitutional majority, substitute House Bill 1023 as amended by the Senate is declared passed. The title of the bill will be the title of the act.
House Bill 1023 heads back to the House for further review. If enacted, it would go into effect in July of 2028.
In gross substitute Senate Bill 5192, clerk will read.
An act relating to school district materials.
Last line.
A Senate proposal to boost funding for local schools was debated on the House floor Wednesday. The bill, Senate Bill 5192, seeks to help districts cover rising costs for basic needs like classroom materials and school operations by increasing the amount of money each school receives per student. Advocates say that currently schools are struggling to keep up with the rising costs of materials and supplies, while state funding has not. The bill will increase funding for materials, supplies, and operating costs, or MSOC as it's called, from the current amount to over $1,600 per student. For high school students, that number goes up by an additional $225, covering everything from textbooks and technology to utilities and insurance. The new funding would also be tied to inflation and enrollment, making sure schools aren't penalized for year-to-year changes in student numbers. The bill was amended for transparency, meaning if passed, schools will be required to report how and where they spend the funds. Proponents say some districts have reported millions of dollars in gaps over recent years, money that could have been used for mental health support and student services. Speaking in favor of the bill, Democratic Representative April Berg.
Materials, supplies, and operating costs are the backbone of what our schools need to keep the lights on. We know as rising costs in communities happen, they also happen for our district. Things like insurance, things like utilities, those costs are rising higher and quicker than most of our districts can keep up with. With education being our paramount duty and our responsibility to amply fund our public schools, this bill will do that.
Expressing his opposition to the bill, Republican Representative Travis Couture.
I don't know if it'll really keep the lights on any more than they are, because what the funding in this bill represents is a mere inflationary increase that would have happened in the budget anyway. Just to put it into perspective, we're talking this increase in this bill is simply $35 per student, Mr. Speaker. I don't know about you, but I don't think an extra $35 is going to keep the lights on. There's a lot of reasons to vote no, because either it doesn't go far enough, or we spent too much money in our K-12 schools without the proper sideboards to understand how that is positively impacting our students in the classroom when they're failing in the worst in 3 decades in math, reading, and science.
The House voted on the bill.
The question before the House is final passage of a gross substitute Senate Bill 5192 as amended by the House. The Speaker is about to start the roll call machine. The Speaker has started the roll call machine. Has every member voted? Representative Simmons, how do you vote? Representative Hill, how do you vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? The Speaker is about to lock the roll call machine. The Speaker has locked the roll call machine. Will the clerk please take the record?
Mr. Speaker, there are 85 yeas, 12 nays, 1 excused.
Having received a constitutional majority and gross substitute Senate Bill 5192 as amended by the House is declared passed.
The bill heads back to the Senate to be further discussed. That's it for this episode of Legislative Review. Make sure to join us nightly at 8 and 11 for your highlights on the state legislature. And follow us on social media. Have a good night.